Don't Shout at the Vegetables, Lessons in Sustainable Leadership and Human Growth, written and narrated by Max Kent.
Welcome to the Global Business Insight Podcast. In episode 8, Weed and Wild Growth, we explore the reality every organization faces. Not everything grows by design. The question isn't how to eliminate the unexpected, but how to manage it wisely. And I'm joined by my partner in crime, Max Kent, to explain further this chapter of his book. So, Max, why are weeds inevitable in every active organization?
Hi, Charlotte. Thanks once again for having me on the podcast. Been a fantastic series talking about the book. I'm really pleased with all the feedback we're getting on it. So please let that continue, because it's absolutely delightful to see it all growing and how much this is resonating with everyone. We're moving into talking about weeds, which is, on our last episode we talked about pruning. Now I think this differs because pruning would be overgrowth of the actual plant itself. So if you use the gardening methodology, we're removing maybe the lower leaves of a plant where we don't want the nutrients and the energy and the water to go to anymore, because we want that plant to grow in the right way. Weeds is different. These are things where they're kind of outdated processes or small dysfunctions within a business, things that have suddenly grown without anyone really noticing, that need to be completely removed. Unnecessary tasks is another good one. The goal isn't to have a weed-free garden, because I think that's impossible. I think it's always going to be, you're always going to have an element of that. And actually, if you think about weeds, they're just plants and flowers that are growing in the wrong place. It's about noticing and managing them before they take over. You've got to expect some mess, as that's a normal thing, and it stops you from panicking every time a problem appears. But it's knowing what are the ones to really get rid of and weed out.
Fantastic. And Max, what is the difference between harmless, thirsty, warning, and invasive weeds?
If I look out into my garden right now, I can see a bit of both, but I have weeded my garden recently, so it's not too bad. And there are some harmless weeds growing out there. Actually, they're growing flowers on them. I don't mind them too much. At some point, I'll remove them. But using that analogy in business, again, is saying that they're just small annoyances that don't really affect the outcome. So that's different to thirsty weeds, that, you know, there's bigger invasive plants that can really disrupt the way a garden grows. They can destabilize things like, you know, if left to continue to grow and be invasive, they can actually destabilize the entire structure of the garden. So if we use that business analogy, thirsty weeds are things like tasks or people that consume attention without giving anything back. And we all come across these sort of people that can suck the energy out of a meeting or a room and really make it 3-4 times harder for that leader to get the whole team back on track. Warning weeds like that signal a deeper issue, like a repeated error in the same process. Invasive weeds are patterns that, if left alone, they will destabilize the whole system. Chronic bullying, systemic under-resourcing, or unethical practices. If you want to use a garden methodology for this, I've seen in the past that neighbours that have had a dispute, I've seen neighbours grow bamboo plants right next to other neighbours' fences, so that it will grow under their boundary and then start to crack and destabilize the retaining wall. And that's actually first-hand experience I've had of that, because I've had it done to me. It's very hard to remove that bamboo as a weed. Some people like bamboo, some people grow it in the right place, but that was a weed because it's growing in the wrong place and destabilizing the overall structure. So take that into a business. Invasive weeds are things that can really fundamentally disrupt the entire business and have to be removed.
Oh, I love that analogy with the bamboo. Thank you for sharing. Max, how do quiet organizational narratives grow into cultural weeds?
Yeah, this is different to the invasive, kind of more aggressive weed growth that we can see. So this is a more of an underlying thing where the business has always had these narratives going on. Things like we never say no to clients, we never challenge leadership, and even things like that old adage of the customer's always right. They're not. And those things, if they're left unchecked, can grow into cultural weeds. So that becomes kind of something that's endemic within the culture of the business, but actually isn't right or helpful. So they start off as a coping strategy because no one's ever written it down. It's just something that maybe one of the leaders has said, and the rest of the team have taken that on because they're too scared to challenge it. But they eventually become unwritten rules that block healthy behavior, because they're rarely spoken out loud. They're quite hard to challenge. They're sort of no one knows where it comes from, but it exists, and that's what everyone does. Part of proper leadership is actually surfacing these stories so they can truly be examined, and we can find out where they really came from, and if necessary, we can replace them.
Absolutely. Max, why can wild growth sometimes be a sign of early innovation?
Wild growth is probably something every startup wants and looks for, but um, it can indicate innovation. It can indicate side projects, informal networks, or experiments that pop up without official permission. Sometimes this is just about leaders getting bored in their role and going off and building a business on the side, um, which is not really sanctioned by the rest of the business, but they can see what the future is, and they've just not been listened to and gone off and done it. So that's kind of wild growth because it's not really measured or being planned for by the business overall. So some of those will be wild growth of weeds. Others could be actual indicators of the first sort of signals of where the system needs to evolve. So a wise leader doesn't automatically cut out all that wild growth. They look at it, they observe it, they learn from it, and then they choose what to intentionally cultivate from that.
It's so interesting. I can't stop listening to you. I'm really envisioning this garden, and I'm looking now for my wild wheat and what there is in the garden. Um,
Audiobooks
Max,
coming out soon.
Max, how do leaders stop wheat from becoming crises?
Okay, leaders stop the weeds becoming a crisis by responding early and proportionately. So you've got to have a handle on this. And again, if I go back to my own garden, I know that I've weeded the garden within the last 3 to 4 weeks. I know where weeds appear. I've got nothing invasive in my garden. I know that it needs doing again soon. But the key thing that I've got a handle on it all. And if there's anything that happens, like I suddenly get a growth of bamboo that's going to break the wall down, I can respond early and proportionately to it without without it destabilizing the rest of the organizational structure. So in business, that might mean a small process tweak. It might actually just mean a quick direct conversation with the person that's starting that growth in the wrong direction, or that wild growth, or setting a boundary around the scope of how the team's working. I think the key to this is about not waiting until the problem becomes so big that only drastic action will do. That's too late. So regular, honest inspection of your garden, of your business, your calendar, your outcomes, the way that you structure and keep ahead of trouble will be what sets you on the right course for this.
Fantastic. And last question for this episode. How does capacity influence whether a weed feels like a crisis?
So capacity determines whether a weed feels manageable or catastrophic. And again, looking out the window, it doesn't feel catastrophic yet, but if I leave it too long, it will be. So I'm conscious of that, and then I'm conscious of when I step in to stop it from being a problem. So the same minor issues will feel like a bit of an irritation in a well-resourced team, but if that team's exhausted, it's going to feel like a disaster. So that's why tending the soil, if you like, but more importantly, protecting the bandwidth of the team is so important because it gives you the resilience to handle problems, in this case, the inevitable weeds that are always going to happen, without tipping everything into crisis mode every single time it happens, because that really will exhaust you and the team.
Well, that is really a wrap, Max. Thank you very much for all your wisdom. And to our listeners, as you head into your week, take a closer look at what's quietly growing around you, what needs attention, what needs removing, and what might actually be worth nurturing. Because not all unplanned growth is a problem, but ignoring it usually is. So, Max, any final words?
I could not have summarized it better, actually, and I'm really glad it's resonating with you so much, because I think it should have that effect on all leaders. So no final words on this one. Just keep aligning with the analogies, keep picking up on the things we're saying here, and see how that applies to your own life and business. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
Don't Shout at the Vegetables: Lessons in Sustainable Leadership and Human Growth. Written and narrated by Max Kent.